Hello lovely people, welcome to another book chat, the weekly roundup of stuff I've read at some point in my past.
Doobie 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 doo. Doobie 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 Sophie Vlogs.
I just have two books to talk about this week because I have like some feelings that I'm still muddling out. I'm just going to dive into it. I'm going to kick things off with On a Sunbeam by... Am I going to kick things off with On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden? Only if I can say the words. This is On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. This was absolutely gorgeous, wonderful, 5 stars, loved every moment of it. This is a chunky little graphic novel. Mia joins the crew of this ship who sort of go around and it's kind of like rebuild and restore beautiful broken down structures. We flash back between like that contemporary plotline and then back to when she was at school with this romance with this girl that she had, and it sort of goes from there. This is definitely one of those books that is very much like character driven. Like there is a plot, but you're really here for like the characters. And boy, did I love the characters. You can always tell when I love a book because I like press my face against it as if somehow this brings us closer. I don't know, but I loved everything about this. I think Tillie Walden is a masterful storyteller, and I think she tells stories really well through this particular medium. Like one thing that I really loved about I Love This Part, which is a smaller graphic novel that I read by her a couple of years ago now, is how much was said without words. And I think that's something that graphic novel medium really lends itself to. When it comes to her artwork, I really love how much black plays in. Like this is one of my favourite little pages. I love how much she uses black in the artwork. Like colour is something which I really feel like you can read into this when certain colours are used, when certain colour palettes are used, and then this black that runs throughout that ties everything together. There's something about it that I just love, and I love like you have much darker colour palettes and then you have these little interludes with much like paler things. I just think it is such a beauty, and sometimes you get really vivid. I don't know if that's a spoiler. I'm not going to show you that, that's a spoiler. Like for example, like how this spread moves from like darkness and then it brings in the colour, and I don't know, like emotions as colour palettes, you know? Also just like this is so queer and like everyone, like in so many ways, and it's so normalized, and I love that. I love Gaze in Space. Gaze in Space is like a genre that I adore, and I would really love your recommendations for more of that. And especially like one thing, like Gaze in Space, I'm using because it's like a generic term that people use, which is so linked to these ideas of found family, which is, for personally speaking as a queer person, something that I feel like a lot of queer people and LGBTQI plus people resonate with. This concept of finding your people and the strength of bonds that can form and those sorts of things. So this like did all of those things, which are like absolute buzzwords for me. Yes, yes, yes. I knew I was gonna love it, and then I read it, and then I loved it, and then here we are. I'll stop babbling now because I feel like we're only going to get more incoherent. But the world building, I loved. It was one of those world buildings where you sort of like, I don't have a sense of this entire universe fleshed out as a whole, but the snippets that I've been given of things were so interesting, and I felt like I was given enough information for this story to happen and work. Equally, I feel like at any point she could revisit this world with completely different people and explore different aspects of it, and it would all be wonderful. I just love it. I mean, it's a reminder to myself that I need to actually prioritise buying and reading everything that Tillie Walden has ever written, because it's excellent, and I love it. The second book I'm going to talk about, I have been putting off recording my thoughts on it for like 4 months because I don't know how I feel, and I feel conflicted about that, and I was like, oh, I might get loads of backlash for not just like blindly loving this book, but I don't know how I feel. It's Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I have things I love about this, and I have things that I don't love about this, and it's left me feeling very muddled. I initially rated this 4 stars when I finished it, then I later moved it back to 3 stars. Now I don't know where I feel. I'm having a real crisis. This is like a fantasy series. We follow a number of different strands throughout. There's kind of this big dragon dude that we don't want to rise and fuck things up, and we have like a number of different like kingdoms and characters and plot lines that we're following. I'm going to leave my summary there because I feel like a lot of people already know what this book is about, and you don't need me to be like blah 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 blah. Samantha Shannon is someone who I follow on Twitter, and I think that she seems really great, and we would probably get on really well as friends. And then every time I read her work, I feel conflicted about certain things. Things I loved about this. I really liked, there's a female-female romance at the heart of this book, and I really enjoyed that romance, and I really enjoyed the time it got to play out, and that sort of thing. And I just loved having like an epic fantasy series that had like a female-female romance as its main romance, and I was like, yes, I love it, I'm here for it. Another thing I loved is some of the dragons. I really loved one of our plotlines, Tane, has these like water dragons as part of their culture, and I was so interested in those dragons. I thought they were really like wonderful, and I really wanted to like see this adapted as like a TV show, to like see those dragons and that sort of thing. I also really enjoyed, like, I could see which kingdoms, just based on some of my history knowledge that I had, I could see some of these kingdoms as relating to moments of history from our world. I could see there were like inspiration points taken, and it was interesting to see how they were like adapted into these then like fantasy versions, which is a thing that a lot of fantasy people do, and I find it interesting when they do, because it's fun to see like, oh, this is your start point and you've like kind of like taken it to here and that sort of thing. For like a chunky book, I read this really quickly. I think I read this in like a week and a half or something. So I was like hooked and immersed enough to want to read it all. I think one of the things where I fall down is I kind of had some issues with some of the pacing. I felt like there were some moments which were given like a lot of time, and then there were other moments which went a bit quicker than I would have liked. An example of this being, there is a big crescendo sort of battle towards the end, and I felt aspects of that were done a little quickly, and I would have kind of liked to have, I don't know, like sat with it a bit longer. I enjoyed it when I was reading it, and I was like whizzing through, and I was like, yeah, final kind of like showdown type thing. But then equally for how threatening the threat felt, I did sometimes feel like we kind of wrapped it up a bit, and I kind of wanted more dragons. Similar to that pacing thing, there were some perspectives that I wanted a bit more of, I think. I wanted more Tane. I really enjoyed Tane, and I really enjoyed the dragons and that sort of stuff. It's definitely, Ede's narrative is definitely our main focal point that we are going around, and Sabran's kingdom and that sort of thing. So I like see that, and I get that. It's just like, I think that I wanted a bit more dragons, and dragons were very present in Tane's narrative, and I didn't feel like Tane got as much time to like be such a character as Ede did, even though that both of them were really quite relevant towards the end. Like, I felt like they were like of equal importance when you got to that crescendo moment, so I think I wanted a little bit more Tane to really like connect with Tane, you know? Part of me wondered if maybe I wanted this to be like a duology, and I have no problem reading a chunky 800-page book. That is not an issue to me. I love a chunky book, especially fantasy, but I wondered if it was split in two, maybe that would have given time for some of those pacing moments that I wanted a bit more time with, to be given a bit more time with, and some of those pacing moments that I felt like we just spent a long time with, to be sort of zhunked slightly. I don't know, I'm still sort of muddling that out. It's been 4 months, and I'm still muddling things out. Another thing I had was like Sabran's queendom. This is very much billed as like a feminist fantasy story, which I see, and I do see that, and I do see that like women's narratives were given a lot of time in this, and I really appreciated that, and I loved having this fantasy that did have so many female characters in, that were given voices and giving perspectives and that sort of thing. Like, I do not in any way want it to be like that I did not see those things and appreciate those things. I think one thing is just that Sabran's queendom confused me slightly, and again, still muddling out some thoughts there, but where my confusion comes from is this queendom still felt like it fell into some like patriarchal kingdom tropes. So like all of Sabran's hand women were women, and it seemed like all of the knights were men, and I don't know, Sabran, even though she is queen, is still like being put in that sort of situation where she has to marry and she has to make an heir. And the thing is I wondered if that was the point, because teeny tiny spoiler, it's not a huge spoiler to the whole thing, but it's mentioned very early on, like Ede's narrative perspective introduces us to the concept that the night that Sabran's queendom is based on, this myth is an incorrect lie. It is not a true reflection of what actually happened in this origin myth that is very much related to like George and the Dragon. where it's like that knight figure is given way more credit, and actually it was the princess who did a lot of the work, that sort of thing. So part of me wondered if the point was supposed to be that because Sabran's queendom is founded on this myth and this lie that was perpetuated by the knight, is that why it still has these links and these structures that are based on, like, kingdoms, if you will. You know, like Sabran, although she is a very strong queen, and although queens always rule, she still needs to marry and have an heir. And although it's a queendom, it still felt quite like the knights are men and the handwomen are ladies, and also there was a whole thing about, like, inheritance through the male line and stuff like this. And I just wasn't sure if that's the point that was being made, because there was never a moment where that really felt confirmed to me, and we just sort of like carried on. So there were like a number of moments like that where it's left me like, there were so many things that I did really like about this, and I did have a fun time with. When it comes down to pacing and some of the world building elements, I really trip up on it, and I don't know how I feel about it, and it's left me conflicted. And it's been 4 months that I've been avoiding making this video, because I kept thinking that maybe if I sat with it, then it would help me figure out my thoughts. Half of me is like, maybe I should do a reread and see how I feel on a reread, because, especially because so much information is given to you, like you have these interludes where there are lots of stories told in this, and I'm a person who likes storytelling in books. So I quite liked the interludes where it was like, here we are telling you a story. I wasn't always certain how much those stories would relate to what was happening. So potentially on rereads, I'm going to get a lot more like understanding of things that maybe I didn't pick up on the first time around because I didn't have all the information and that sort of stuff. But I have real conflicting feelings about it, which is a shame, because I wanted to adore it, and I know a lot of people who do adore it. Hi Briley, hi Monique, I hope you don't hate me. So it's certainly given me a lot to consider, which in many ways is a sign of a good book, that it has given me all these things that I'm mulling over and that sort of thing. I just feel like I have elements of dissatisfaction with it, but equally it's such a chunky book that I'm like, maybe I should take some time, more than 4 months apparently, to sit with it for longer, and to do another reread at some point, see how I feel. I don't know. Samantha Shannon is just a writer who I really want to like more than I actually like. Like, I didn't really like the Bones season, and I have conflicting feelings, and I'm just gonna stop talking now, because I feel like I'm just going around in circles of me being like, I liked these things, I don't know how I feel about these things. Also, it has been 4 months, and I'm sure I've forgotten a bunch of stuff that was stuff that I really liked, and stuff that I also felt conflicted about, but it has been 4 months, so I have lost some of the knowledge of my brain. But I didn't really know how to put it into words, and I was like, is this going to be one of those books that I just don't talk about on my channel because I don't really know how to talk about? So I thought it might just be better to do a brain dump, chuck all of my thoughts down, hear from you. How do you feel? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Give me all those thoughts. I would love to know. I would love to know if you loved it, the things that you love about it, because there are things that I do love about it. Equally, if you also struggled with this book, what are the elements that you struggled with? That might help me work out what I struggled with. I don't know. I like it in many ways, but I equally feel conflicted. Hindsight, rewatch this video and take a shot every time I say the word conflicted. You'll be smashed. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to stop talking. I feel really self-conscious. When I do these videos, I like to be able to speak concisely and to give like an accurate summation of my feelings. And this is one of those things where I feel like I don't really have like an accurate summation, because I'm still just like, I don't know. But yeah, I just thought I'd do it anyway, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm going to call it a day now. I'm going to see you next time for something different, hopefully, if you don't hate me for not liking this book. That's everything I want to talk about this week. I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Let's muddle some stuff out in the comments together, shall we? But otherwise, I hope you're having the loveliest of days, and I will see you next time for something different.